fundamentals of course planning, and there are many elements to course planning. One, of course, is identifying the learning objectives, what the students should expect to learn when they take your course. And then, of course, how are you going to deliver these learning objectives? What is going to be the content of the course? What is the method of delivering this information? Is it going to be just classroom conversations? Is there a lab associated with it? Are there going to be group discussions? So there are several ways by which content can be delivered. And then, of course, how do you know whether the learning objectives were met? Because that is critical both for you as an instructor and for the students. So there has to be both formative assessments and summative assessments designed as part of the course. So these are some key elements of course planning. And I'm sure you're already familiar with this, but if you're not, this is a good way to get yourself familiarized with these fundamentals. So before we get more into the details, this is, I've been told you've been introduced to the different domains and levels of learning, especially the Bloom's taxonomy in module 1 or in the earlier modules. But just as a refresher, there are 3 basic levels or domains. One is the cognitive, which has got to do with the knowledge, the thinking, the receiving, the analyzing of information. The second is psychomotor, which is the doing part, the action part, because that is just as important as sort of the knowing or the head. And then the affective piece, the feeling, the heart, your emotional intelligence, your emotional quotient, and how this information that you're teaching helps the students socially, as well as what values does it convey. So these are 3 very important domains within the levels of learning: cognitive, psychomotor, and affective. You've probably heard of the Bloom's taxonomy, which really deals with the cognitive piece. There are 6 levels within the Bloom's taxonomy. And when you're designing course learning objectives, the Bloom's taxonomy is very critical in designing the appropriate learning objectives. And there are 6 levels: remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Remembering being the lowest level and creating being the highest level within the 6 levels. There are 5 levels within the psychomotor and 5 levels within the affective domains of learning. And again, this is just a quick review of what you have already been exposed to earlier on in this certification course. So again, a few definitions I think that are important to establish the foundations here. So some of the operative definitions are program outcomes. Then these are a set of accessible attributes that students must achieve at the time of graduation. In ABET language, these are referred to as student outcomes. ABET has 7 student outcomes, 1 through 7, and these are the same as the program outcomes that students have to demonstrate, or programs have to demonstrate, that every graduating student meets these program outcomes or student outcomes. In the Indian context, there are 12 such attributes that make up the program outcomes. And then something else that we need to define are the course learning outcomes, or the course learning objectives. These are very specific to any course and should be accessible. You should be able to assess them and indicate to the students what they're expected to learn once they complete the course. And one can draw a map between the course learning outcomes and program outcomes. That's a very traditional way of showing the evaluators as to how your program is satisfying the program outcomes, and how the course learning objectives or course learning outcomes are connected to the program outcomes. So this is, again, a very traditional way of showing to these evaluators how you meet the requirements. So let's jump straight into the course learning objectives. It's a roadmap. It is a unofficial contract between you, the instructor, and the students, outlining what the students will learn during the course of the semester. And when they are done at the end of the semester, what is expected of them with regards to this course. So it clearly is a roadmap. You should, as much as possible, use the Bloom's taxonomy to describe the learning objectives. And the reason I state the Bloom's taxonomy is because the Bloom's taxonomy are the action verbs. And these action verbs can then be assessed rather easily, whether it's formative assessment throughout the semester or a summative assessment at the end of the semester when you have a final exam. So it is important that learning objectives are made up of action verbs and that they can be assessed. And the best way to find action verbs are within the Bloom's taxonomy. So again, what do these do for you and for you as the instructor and for the students? They highlight, they summarize the core concepts of the course. So this is the way you communicate what is important as far as the course is concerned. What are the course materials that you may be using to deliver this information? The different levels of complexity that the students have to master, because your course could cover all the 6 levels of the Bloom's taxonomy, and therefore the students need to be aware from the first day that the levels of mastery that they must achieve in order to pass the course. It's also another way to show the different activities, whether they are group-based activities or individual activities that the students may be engaged in order to meet the content and satisfy the content. It also serves as a review for students when they're getting ready for quizzes and tests and exams, and also for doing the homework assignments. So it's a good way to summarize what to expect in these different assessment actions that you may have in place. It also demonstrates the alignment between theory and application. So it's good to know the theory, it's good to understand the theory, but then the best way to show an example of the theory is through application. And again, this is a good management tool for students to manage their own learning. So these are some really good characteristics of course learning outcomes and course learning objectives. So I've done enough. I've done a lot of talking here. So here's sort of the first poll question. How will you rate your knowledge about the Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive objectives? So this is really the 6 levels of Bloom.
Yeah.
So 38% are confident, 37% are confused about a few of them, and 26% need to learn more about them. And that's all fine and good. You know, even though I've been, yeah, please.
No, go ahead. No, I'm just going to, just an announcement, because the thing is that most of the people in most colleges have been in preparation of NBA and all are familiar with the learning Bloom's taxonomy. But this office hour on Saturday will be devoting all the time, more than 1 hour on this. So if you people who are confused about some of them or need more help, the 37 and the 26%, please join Saturday 8:30 p.m. There'll be special session only on everything as usual, but focus will be on learning objectives. Okay. Thank you, Neeraj.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, I've been in this business for about 30 years in front of the classroom, and I still learn new ways to express course learning objectives. And so again, this is a lifelong learning exercise. So every day you learn a new thing about Bloom's taxonomy and how do you communicate between the instructor and the student. So I believe there's another poll question. The course learning outcomes for first-year students must be restricted only to remembering, understanding, and applying, which are really the first three levels of the Bloom's taxonomy.
I think we have a fairly good idea. 61% say true, Dr. Bush,
and 38% are saying false.
Yeah.
So I guess there is no black and white answer, but it's definitely not true because every course can have, independent of the level of the course, whether it's a first year, second year, third year, fourth year course, depending on the type of course, all six or some combination of the six cognitive levels of the Bloom's taxonomy can be incorporated into the course. The distribution of the content, whether it or the distribution of the learning outcomes may vary from course to course and the level of course, but I personally don't believe that a first year course can only have remembering, understanding, and a second year have remembering, understanding, and application, and then the third and fourth year have all six. It's, I think, a function of the course and the content that is going to be delivered, and then, of course, how you distribute the course learning outcomes across the six domains. There is no hard and fast rule between the different levels of the Bloom's taxonomy and the level of the course.
Can I add something? Yeah,
sure,
here?
Sure.
Yeah, wonderful. So the reason we added this poll here is because this is, and the reason 38% have said it is true, or 61 have said true, because these are some of the messages that have been given either by the institute or sometimes the visiting NBA team. I don't know why.
Yeah. So again, as I noted, in ABET language, it's 1 through 7. There are 7 such student outcomes, which could be broken down into these 2 major categories. And as I said, the traditional way of doing this is to map these student outcomes to the course learning objectives. And then you can take it down one further step is when you prepare a quiz or a test or a homework or a final exam, every question or a set of questions can be mapped to a learning outcome and therefore can be mapped to a student outcome attribute or a program outcome attribute, so that when you assess, you can show those assessment results to the evaluator right from an assignment level. So you can do it at a course level, and then you can bring it down to an assignment level, a quiz, a test, or a final exam. So that's generally how we map these to the course learning objectives. So, just for an example, communication skills. So communication skills could be both written and oral skills. And if a course has a lab component, then communication skills can easily be demonstrated through the writing of the labs, showing, and then presenting the results to the rest of the class. So you can actually address the communication skills through lab exercises or design projects. So there are several ways by which communication skills can be demonstrated. The same thing with teamwork. If labs are done in a team or in a group, then you can set up you can set up the assessment of the team. You can do a 360 evaluation of the team, and that is a great way to satisfy the graduate attributes or the student outcomes as they're described in ABET. And then, of course, this is sort of the fourth industrial revolution. And this is where the future jobs are. Folks with these skills or learners with these skills are better positioned to to get jobs of the future. Of course, there are some carryovers from the previous industrial revolutions, like critical thinking or problem-based thinking. That will never go away. But additional elements have been added. Now, how do you bring this into your classroom? Naturally, rather than an artificial way of saying, today we'll talk about the fourth revolution skills. That just doesn't work. It has to be incorporated in the day-to-day teaching. So for example, you can bring in practicing engineers, folks from the industry, a few times in the semester, and they can talk about how to manage people in a large organization, and what skills are needed, or how do they negotiate contracts. And again, that is a very skillful way of bringing that information into the classroom. So if you are close to an industry, I think that is a great way to bring hands-on information into the classroom. Coordinating with others, of course, you can have group activities where students are working in teams. That's another way of learning how to work with others, and sort of adjusting to the skills of others. And in a team, you can have folks with all kinds of skills or different skill levels, and they bring in different expertise into a project. So that's another way to bring in these attributes into the classroom. So again, these are just some examples that can help you bring this into the classroom. But I think it has to be incorporated into the routine class rather than a standalone lecture on these skills, because those don't really become part of the student understanding. So I think if it's part of the course, then that is a lot more impactful than just a standalone lecture. Dr. Veena Kumar, would you like to add anything?
No.
Yeah, okay.
No, I'm just saying that thank you so much for bringing this up, because sometimes we always feel that as instructors, our job is completed when we complete the course and we've done well and students have done well. No, our ultimate responsibility is get them ready for employment, right? And we know that there's a large percentage of students in India who are graduate students who are said to be not ready for employment. And that's very sad, because especially for engineering colleges, people spend a lot of money. Many parents, poor things, they mortgage their land, they take loans. So keep this in mind, and it's not that difficult. We'll keep on talking about these in all modules a little bit, but I thank you for bringing this up, Dr. Bush. This is important.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so it's again time to stretch your brains now, time to reflect. So how do you map course learning outcomes to program outcomes? And
you can talk about your current practice that you're doing right now. How are you? Very short, 30 seconds, you know that.
Yes. Hello, ma'am. Good evening. Am I audible?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
We'll tell you if you're not audible. Go.
Okay. So for my course, we have defined 5 COs, and for each particular CO, we identify that for which PO can match it, and we will rate that particular thing in 1 to 3, 1 for low and 3 for high. Suppose if one CO map with 5 POs, then we will map that particular CO with 5 POs with different ratings from 1 to 3, low to high.
So the next piece in this puzzle is, how do you structure your course? How do you design a course? In fact, this can be extended to designing the entire curriculum. So in the beginning,
I think we'll take it at the end now, because you just had the interactivity.
Yeah, sure. No worries. So traditionally, the way we approach designing a course is, we choose a textbook, or we come up with a table of contents, and then we basically try to find a textbook that addresses some or all of the content. Then we focus on developing the lectures or the mode of delivering that content. And then at the end, we sort of think about assessment, whether it's quizzes, homeworks, labs. And so this is sort of the traditional way of designing a course, and to some extent even a curriculum. And as the box on the side of the screen shows, that it is very content driven, and it's very content focused. And the way we should be thinking about a course or a design of a course is really sort of backwards. And that's why this is called backward design. So you should always think of the end first. So what are the outcomes? What are the learning outcomes that you want the students to meet and hopefully master at the end of the 14 weeks or 15 weeks? So once those have been identified, then how are you going to assess? How are you going to determine whether those outcomes have been met? And there are several ways to assess those. Some can be formative, that is, they happen all along the semester. And then some can be summative, that is, they happen at the end of the semester, and all are acceptable ways of assessing. And there are informal ways of also assessing the outcomes. Not everything should be grade dependent. There can be informal conversations that happen in the classroom that also point towards the meeting of the outcomes. And once the outcomes and the assessments have been determined, then you determine the content. And how is it that you are going to deliver that content such that the outcomes are being met, as well as the assessment can happen in a formative or a summative way. Now, it's easy for me to put this on a PowerPoint slide and preach about this. It's not very easy to do this. This requires a fair amount of thinking, a fair amount of planning. But once you start using this methodology, once you start using this process, I think the course content, the course becomes a lot more richer. And I think the students enjoy the learning process. And the other thing I would also note is you want to make sure that the students are part of the learning process. That is not a one-way delivery of information, that this is more of a community way of learning. So again, if you haven't tried this methodology, give it a try. Don't try for the whole course if you've never done this. Do it for one module of the course and see what challenges you face. And once you overcome those challenges, you can extend it to 2 modules in the course and 3 modules in the course. And eventually you'll have the whole course developed in this backward design mode. So again, the students are always the center, the focus. You want to first think about the goals and the learning objectives. Bloom's taxonomy, accreditation, these are some of the reasons why we do this. Then, of course, you want to talk about the assessment, formative as well as summative assessments. That's an important piece. And then, of course, you talk about the delivery, the execution. How do I deliver this material? What active learning strategies am I going to use? Is there a lab associated with this course? So this way you can relate the theory that you teach in the lecture to the actual lab that the students perform. I think that's a great way to transfer theory to practice. That doesn't mean that traditional lectures are obsolete. There are certain instances where a lecture is quite useful to communicate the facts. And then, of course, use technology to make learning more efficient and learning more enjoyable. we are in the middle of the Chat GPT revolution. Every day there is a new format version of artificial intelligence. I'm of the opinion that rather than banning artificial intelligence in the classroom, I think we should focus on how to incorporate artificial intelligence, Chat GPT, into the learning process, and educating the students about the advantages and the disadvantages of artificial intelligence. But that's a conversation for a different time. But again, technology is evolving at a very, very rapid pace, and the students are way ahead of you and I. So they're going to use it no matter what you say. But this is really a graphic that summarizes what backward design looks like. Again, backward design can be applied at all levels. Traditionally, it is first applied at a course level when you design the entire course, and then you can bring it to the next level, which is the unit level or a module level. And then, of course, you can bring it down to a lecture level. But it's my advice would be to start at if you've never done this before, then apply to a lecture level first, because it's easier. It's only 1 or 2 lectures. It's easy to implement. It's easy to digest. But eventually, you want to make sure that the entire course is designed based on backward design, and to some extent, the entire curriculum in a program should be designed based on this backward design concept. Again, the process is pretty straightforward at the course level. What is the status of the course? Is it a required course? Is it an elective course? Is it a course that has a lab in it? Is it a standalone lab course? You want to create or modify the learning objectives. Also keep in mind that you may be able to map these learning objectives to the program outcomes. Look at the course level plan based on total number of available class sessions. One pushback we get during these webinars is there's so much content to be addressed. We don't have time for all these creative ways to deliver content. And my response to that is that if you teach students how to learn, they'll pick up all this other information on their own. You will not have to spend a lot of class time in delivering factual information. I think students are smart enough, nimble enough. They are so familiar with technology that some of the mundane, some of the more straightforward information they can pick up on their own, provided you teach them how to learn. I think that's the key. If you teach them how to learn, they'll be able to pick up the more factual information, and you can use class time for more conceptual, more challenging concepts for the course. Obviously, you want to make sure that the learning resources are identified. This could be the required textbook, but again, there is so much out there on the internet and virtual resources or electronic resources the students can tap into. And then, of course, the evaluation, the assessment of the course. So these are some basic steps in the backward planning. At the unit level, again, it's sort of the same concept. And again, it depends on the flavor of the class, learning outcomes, what are the prerequisites, how are you going to assess it, what are the key concepts. Again, these same principles can be applied at the basic unit level for any given course. This needs to be, again, lecture level, of course. You have to calibrate based on where the students are. And there are several ways, I believe, and we'll talk about some of these ways next Thursday on how to plan at the lecture level. But obviously, you'll have to be a little more flexible when you design the lecture. Switching to some resources that may be available to you. There are a lot of free and open resources. MOOCs are a very popular way of getting information. Now, of course, there is ChatGPT that you can tap into to get some information. But before we talk about MOOCs, here's a poll question. I request Sridhar to set it up as, have you used MOOCs? And you have 5 options to choose from.
we have about 29, 30, almost 30% people who have never used MOOCs. Wonderful. I'll include this in my lecture 3. Okay.
Okay.
We'll work on this. There are many options, but if there is a very nice, your assignment is based on this this week's assignment. Read the article which is in your reading, in your class reading, and then you'll learn a lot about it. Okay. We can also talk about it in our office hour.
Sure. So MOOCs is just one example of integrating that into your classroom. There are several free of charge MOOCs that are available. But one thing I would want to say is, before you make the MOOC a part of your course, make sure that you have seen it and heard it and participated in it first, to make sure that the quality of the MOOC is appropriate, and that it addresses the content, the concepts that best fit your class or the course that you're teaching, that the examples are suitable, and the authenticity is there. You just don't want to give the link to the students and set them free, because the last thing you want is misinformation and misconcepts or wrong concepts that are being perpetuated. So I think you should evaluate the MOOC first yourself, before you let the students start using the MOOCs and participating in the MOOCs. And the other thing I would say is, you should also provide an opportunity to dissect the MOOC after the students have seen it, have a conversation about it. What is it that the students heard, what their interpretation is, and then what is your interpretation about what you heard in the MOOC. I think the debriefing is just as important as making sure that the MOOC is authentic. So not everything on the internet is accurate. So I would sort of I would caution you when you use these sources from the internet.
Yeah, most of them are done, so we can
Yeah.
we can share.
Yeah, the correct answer actually, Professor Bush will tell you, is 51 to 80%, as much as that people forget in 24 hours what is learned. If it's just a monologue, it's just a straight delivery. So
yeah, so it's a high number, and if it's a one-way passive conversation, then, and if the students are not engaged in the learning process, a significant amount of information that you as an instructor have delivered is lost. So we can debate about what the exact number is, but I think we are all in agreement that it's a high number, and we want to minimize that loss of information. And so how do we design a lecture, how do we design a course in such a way that we minimize the amount of lost information? So again, we're putting you back to work. So mention one strategy for reinforcing retention of learning, and so please raise your hand.
A lot of good ideas. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so hang on. Yeah, I think everyone sort of got the idea. The question is interaction, recalling, connecting with the practical examples, time on task. I think these are all great strategies to engage the student in the learning process. So these are all great ideas. There are always these questions that rattle in our heads. I've been asked this question many times, that when we use all these interactive strategies, are we covering the content? You know, that has always been a question. How do I manage my time effectively? How do I engage every single student in the classroom? These are all the questions that have been asked in the past, and I'm sure you are thinking about a lot of these questions yourself. So hopefully by the end of this conversation, some of these blues will go away, and we can come up with a much better learning environment for the students and a more interactive environment for our students. So,
Sir,
yes,
we are experiencing the same in the sessions which are going right now with us.
Oh, okay. Okay, can we talk about that at the end of the lecture, please? Sure.
So effective lecture probably has multiple components, but the two critical components is how do you package the lecture? How do you design the delivery of the lecture? How do you design the delivery of the content? I think some thought has to be put into it before entering the classroom. If you just walk in cold and hope that things will resonate with the students, that is not a good recipe. That's not a recipe for success. So really, you have to think through how you're going to package the content and how you're going to deliver the content and how you're going to stage it through the next 50 minutes or 80 minutes, depending on how long your lecture is. I think those are critical ideas that you need to keep in mind before entering a class. So we've talked about some of this. Structure is important. Organization is important, because if the students realize that the instructor is organized, then this reflects well on the instructor, and the students then also want to be structured, because structured content delivery also leads to structured learning, and it helps the students understand the material. So one way to organize a lecture is to have the outcomes laid out very clearly. So the student should know at the onset, at the beginning of the lecture, what it is that they are supposed to get out of the lecture at the end of 50 minutes or 80 minutes. I think that is important. Disclosure of what you are going to teach either on Canvas or whatever learning management system your institution uses. I think disclosure of that information even before the class starts, I think is very important. It gives the students a sense of how the entire semester is going to be laid out. We'll talk a little bit later about the syllabus, but again, the syllabus is another way to communicate with the students that how the content is going to be delivered. What is the timeline for delivering the content? So giving a good course outline is important. Active learning, of course. Sure, please go ahead.
No, I think the term syllabus is not used in India. I mean, they get their course content document from the department, but not the way we use it in the US. Like we give that one small document to the class.
Sure, but even if the content is handed down to you, you can disclose to the students how that content is broken down over the course of the semester. Again, some sort of organization of that content. So you may not have control over the content, but you have control on how that content is organized over the semester and how you're going to deliver it. So we should be nimble and flexible to work within the constraints of the education system. So at least that's my opinion. Active learning, and we already had this conversation, engaging the students, I think is important, and getting feedback. Both formative and summative feedback from the student is always important, because it's continuous quality improvement. So the mistakes you may have made or things you may have heard from the student in this semester, you can improve in the upcoming semester. So we are continuously improving our content delivery and how we deliver and how we structure the course. That's we should all be open to that. Planning is important. Again, preparation as an instructor is very critical. Setting the context is important. And I do want to talk a little bit about this last bullet, because not everyone learns the same way. Most of us are visual learners. So I think if you can show a table, a graph, a picture, an illustration, that resonates a lot more than writing an equation or writing a whole bunch of words on the board or on a PowerPoint slide, because most students are visual learners, they're not verbal learners. So try to minimize the amount of words and try to maximize the amount of illustrations to explain an equation. You can obviously have the equation written and explain the variables of the equation, but then try to illustrate the equation through a graph to say, okay, if I change X, what happens to Y? I think that will resonate a lot more than just simply showing an equation. You know, if it's a quadratic equation, or if there is a squared term, show them that by changing that term, it's not a linear relationship, it's a non-linear relationship. If you show an illustration, that resonates more than just simply showing the variables of the equation. So I think that is important. Delivering the lecture in small pieces rather than a 50-minute or an 80-minute monologue is a lot more effective. Deliver content for 8 or 10 minutes and then have the students perform an activity that reinforces that concept. I think is a lot more effective than just a complete brain dump for 50 minutes or 80 minutes. That's just is not going to work well for students. So again, planning is important. I think there's a lot of background noise here. So if folks can mute themselves. So again, this is what I was alluding to, that you can take a lecture. Let's assume it's a 50-minute lecture. You can break it down into 4 or 5 pieces where you have an opening piece. And the opening piece is very critical. What the opening piece does is you can connect the previous day's content with the current content. So the students can see the continuity between what they did 2 days ago versus what they're going to do today. I think that's important. Another way of designing an opening is to ask some questions about what was done on the previous day. And I think somebody noted that, is to basically recall what was done the previous day. Again, that brings all the students to the current status, so that when you are presenting a new concept, everyone is on the same page. Then you obviously transition into today's concept or today's content. But again, keep it short, keep it 10, 12 minutes. And as soon as a piece of the concept has been delivered, design an activity, engage the students in an activity. And this is really task on time, or time on task, that you've taught them a concept. Now you give them a task to perform where they have to apply the concept. And this is a great way of understanding whether the students have grasped the concept or not. If the students have grasped the concept, you can move on to the next concept. If the students are struggling with the concept that you've delivered, I don't see any point in going on with a new concept if they're still struggling with the existing concept. And so this is the time when you want to reinforce, find other ways to deliver the concept so that the students can learn. And then you go into the next concept, repeat the cycle, and then close. I think closure is just as important. Summarizing the high points of the lecture. Checking with students on their level of understanding. And there are many ways to do that. You can do a quick minute paper as part of the closure, where students can identify some concepts they've understood really well, and some concepts that they haven't understood really well. Again, this is a great way to close. Another example of closure is to give students a window into what you're going to address the next lecture. So again, it is laying the stage for what is going to happen the next time. So again, there are several ways by which you can design an effective lecture, and this is one example of how you can do it. So again, it's time on task again, so we are demonstrating what we are preaching here.
Sir, sometimes it will be possible, sometimes it may not be possible, sir. We cannot meet timelines.
Okay. Right.
You have to be flexible. Your design has to depend on what you're teaching. So this is a suggestion, not the only solution. This is out of some research where you're comparing passive learning with active learning, and 90% of retention is based on activity. And again, this is time on task. So if the students do things in order to demonstrate their understanding of the concept, there is a 90% chance that they will retain that material, as was seen in that original poll, where there was a high percentage of loss of learning or just loss of retention because it was just a straight out passive lecture. So 10% is retained of what they read, 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see. So again, this is saying that we are visual learners. So the more illustrations that we see, the better chance we have of retaining the material. 50% of what they hear and see, that is 50% of the retention happens. 70% of what they say and write. Writing is again time on task, but again 90% is what they do. So if there are more tasks that you can bring into your lecture, the better off is going to be the retention. So again, give a thought of, think about this and how you can bring this into your teaching and content delivery. So plan for an effective closure, and we've sort of talked about this. Signal to the students that you are reaching to the end of your lecture. I think that is important, and there are many ways you can do it. The easiest way is, let me summarize what we've discussed today. That gives the student, the audience, a signal, a clue that, okay, we are reaching the end of today's presentation. I think that is so important to give that clue. Closure could be summarizing that day's information, summarizing the high points of that day's information, connecting today's information with what you're going to do tomorrow. I think that's another great way to present a closure. If you are going to assign a homework, then you want to talk about the homework. What resources are available to the students in order to complete the homework? If there is going to be a quiz the next time, you can summarize by saying the syllabus for the quiz is going to be this or that. What is not in here, but you could it's actually here, bullet number 2. You can bring up the learning outcomes, the course learning outcomes or the lecture outcomes, and say, okay, these were the lecture outcomes we were hoping to address. We've addressed them all, or we addressed 80% of them, and we'll finish off the remaining 20% the next time. So these are all ways by which you can close a lecture on a given day. I think this rounds out a 50-minute or an 80-minute lecture reasonably well. So here's another poll. In which area of your lectures do you think you need improvement? And it's a different thing for different people. There is no right or wrong answer to this. And I mean, time management we all experience time management issues, and there is a certain level of content that has to be delivered. Probably this is a little more significant in India than it probably is here in the US framework. But time management is always an issue. There's a limited amount of semester time and a certain level of content has to be delivered. We have to get creative in how we manage that time. Are we spending too much time on factual information and using up a lot of class time delivering factual information? And we'll talk a little bit about that through the flipped classroom model. So there are tricks that you can use to actually create more time and yet be able to deliver the content in a very effective manner. Thank you for this feedback. This is very useful. So,
Neeraj, can I just make one quick
Yeah,
comment? Just for the
please.
participants, lecture 3 is completely devoted to time management. For the lecture 3 of this this module is how we can try. I mean, we can't probably completely manage that, but and as Professor Bush said, some ideas he's going to share with you now with flipped class. But the lecture 3 also will talk about how to manage, because this is everyone's problem. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so this is a perfect segue into this concept of flipped classrooms, where a lot of the factual information is addressed outside the classroom, and the real classroom time, the very important classroom time, is spent in addressing troublesome concepts, addressing or working problems, numericals that highlight these concepts, rather than spending valuable classroom time regurgitating definitions or laws, which the students can read on their own. There are enough resources that are available in the internet space where that reading can happen beforehand, the preparation can happen beforehand, and then when they come to class, they're actually performing and working on a task that you have designed. So that has been, this has proven quite successful in addressing the time management problem, but more importantly, the learning process. You are teaching the student how to learn. And I think if you teach the student how to learn, they will learn more complex material rather easily. So here's a straightforward poll question, no right or wrong answer. Have you tried using a flipped class mode? It's not 50-50, but there is no overwhelming majority. And again, as I said, there's no right or wrong answer in here. It looks like about 54% have experimented with this, and about 46% have not. And that's fine too. But if you have an opportunity, I strongly encourage you to experiment with this, not for the entire course, experiment it with one lecture, because not all content lends itself to the flipped mode. So even in a given course, certain parts of the content just don't lend themselves to a flipped mode, and some content lends themselves to a flipped mode. So again, you can have a split way of delivering lectures and delivering content even within one semester. Another poll question here: if yes, what has been your experience? Good. It wasn't a disaster for anyone, so that's a good thing. So that's a positive, and for the most of you, it has been quite successful. But they do see a potential. I think that's very encouraging. And for a handful of you, it was unsuccessful. Again, don't be depressed. Don't be disheartened. Try again. Maybe you want to learn from your colleague who's had a successful experience. Maybe they can coach you through the flip model. So the more we talk, the more we engage our colleagues within your institution or across the institution. I think one big advantage of the certification courses that IUCE is building a community, and you have an opportunity to network with the members of this community. So you're not limited just to your institution. You have now a community which extends across the entire country. So I think this is an amazing opportunity for you to connect and network with the community of learners and instructors through this teacher certification model. So in a traditional model, we spend a lot of the class time teaching factual content for the most part, and then we send the students to their homes or to their dormitories and say, okay, now apply those concepts at your own time through homework assignments, through projects. So that is sort of the traditional mode of delivering content. And if you contrast that with the flip model, and that's why it's called the flip, because we are turning it upside down, we are saying that read the content, the factual material on your own time, when you're back at home or when you're in your dormitories, wherever it is that you reside, that's where you go over the factual content. Come up with your questions, things that you don't understand when you are reading the factual content. And when you come to class, we spend the valuable class time answering those questions, having a discussion across the groups, or also working on numerical examples, or somebody mentioned codes. You're actually doing things, you're actually applying the concepts that you may have read as part of your exercise at home. So that is what is meant by sort of flipping the traditional model. These are proven attributes. It promotes learning. It allows you to become a critical thinker. You've read the material. There is no guarantee that you'll understand everything, and you're not expected, or the student is not expected to. But if you are a critical thinker, you can formulate the questions that you want to pose to the instructor. I think that in itself is an art, because that makes you a critical thinker. It promotes engagement, because now the students are going to raise their hand and ask the question. They are going to be part of the learning process. There is accountability, because there is going to be a task that is going to be performed in the class based on the reading that you had asked the students to do. So the students are accountable now to read that material and then deliver on the task that they were supposed to do. It can promote collaboration and teamwork. Students can form informal teams outside the classroom, read the material, quiz each other, question each other for level of understanding. And when they come to the class, they can present their questions as a team. So again, that's another way to get your questions asked, but you're promoting collaboration and teamwork, not only within the class, but also outside the classroom. Communication, you're improving both oral and written communication indirectly. You're not telling, this is not a direct way of improving communication, but you are encouraging students to talk to each other. And I think that's important. And again, the students become more confident and they take ownership of the learning opportunity. So these are all very positive outcomes of the flipped classroom. There are always apprehensions. The student will not read. The student will not come prepared. Only some students will be active. The entire exercise will be time consuming, and this goes back to time management. Noise in the classroom, these are all valid apprehensions, but it is incumbent on the instructor to plan these exercises. You really cannot walk into a class and then say, today I'm going to do flipped classroom. If you haven't planned all these, then all these apprehensions, or some of ththese apprehensions, will come true. So the more you plan, the more you practice this, the better you're going to become in alleviating or reducing some of these apprehensions. So again, this goes to planning. What is it that you're going to do with a certain lecture? What resources are you going to make available to the students so that the students have a rich source of resources to read from? What classroom activities are you going to perform? This has to be all planned. This cannot be impromptu or cannot be a sudden desire to do this. This all has to be planned. And how is it that you're going to implement it? Is it going to be an individual activity? Is it going to be a group activity? Is it going to be an activity in pairs? Is it going to be an all-class activity? So again, all these strategies have to be thought through by the instructor before coming to class. Don't let flipped classroom be a surprise to the students. Talk about this model with the students. Explain to the students what this model is. Sort of bring them along with this process. Explain why this is important. I think if you make the students a partner in the learning process, then they are going to participate in the learning process more willingly than versus if you say, well, this is how I'm going to do it. Don't ask me questions as to why I'm doing it. Then you are not going to, then you don't have a partner in your students. So I think the more transparent you are, that will make the students embrace this possibility more readily than if this was just a top-down approach. I think that is important. So you want to bring the students along in this process. Again, defining outcomes is always important because this way the student knows what they're going to learn and you as an instructor know what the plan is. So defining outcomes is important. Pick a topic that is suitable for this mode. As I noted, select the learning materials that the students will have to engage in prior to coming to class. All the resources need to be identified. Create a detailed schedule for flipped classes and should be available in writing so the students are clear on what's going to happen when. And then plan the class activity. All this pre-class planning is so important. So the time investment on the part of the instructor is significant, but I think the outcome, the results are very rewarding, both for the instructor as well as for the students. So it is well worth the time on part of the instructor if the students become better learners. Learning material, again, is it going to be a textbook? Which chapter? Is it going to be a scholarly or a research article? You need to identify where the students can get this information. You could have a recorded lecture that you post on the learning management system that the students can review. You can point to MOOCs, and we talked about MOOCs last time. There is so much information out there on the internet space that can help you, so you don't have to duplicate information that already exists. But again, you as an instructor have to do all this research beforehand and then share it with the students. So the students are not wasting time searching this information. They have this information on the learning management system, and then they can spend their valuable time reading this information before they come to the class. So planning an in-class activity, that's so critical. So again, here's another opportunity for you to reflect on what kind of an activity that you may plan for a flipped class.
Okay.
I'll give them a task to solve a problem, or I'll conduct a small debate, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
This was very useful, and again, some of the in-class activities, again, they're important. You know, they're an important piece of the flipped class. The procedure should be explained to the students, and that's going back to making sure that the students are part of this learning process. They know they're equal participants and they know what this flipped classroom is all about. I think that's important. Activities could be of higher order of learning, the Bloom's taxonomy. Again, you want to make sure that the activities they fit within the class time. So planning is important. As an instructor, you want to make sure that everyone, or at least most of the students, are participating, especially if it's a group-related activity. You also want to make sure that the groups are accountable. So you do, I think somebody noted, ask randomly different groups to present their thought process, because that's, again, making sure that students are really talking about the topic on hand, and they're not discussing some personal issue, or they're planning what they're going to do over the weekend. You want to make sure that the classroom time is spent appropriately. And then as an instructor, you want to make sure that if there are misconceptions that you are hearing as part of the student discussion, that you stop the conversation and present and try to dispel all these misconceptions and present the most appropriate solution. That is also important. So it cannot just be an exercise where students are talking. You also want to make sure that misconceptions are not being propagated through the conversation. Again, reflection is always important. Even as an instructor, you want to sort of analyze and say, okay, were the intended outcomes achieved? What worked? What did not work? That is always important. What changes you can make for future implementations. I think this continuous quality improvement is always critical. So just as the students are reflecting, we as instructors should be reflecting on. Feedback is always important, whether it's formal feedback or informal feedback, or just people can raise their hands. You can do a minute paper. Whatever method you use, and whatever method you use to receive feedback, I think is very important. What is even more important is that you act to that feedback, because students spend their time giving you feedback. And if we as instructors ignore that feedback, or only focus on the positive feedback and ignore the criticism or suggestions for improvement, then the next time around, you are not going to get a lot of feedback from the students. So I think it is important to get the feedback, but the students also have to see the action as a result of their feedback. I think that's very important. Okay, so switching to the last piece of this webinar today is what happens, why the first day of class is so critical. It is, I think, you make an impression. I think the first impressions matter, and the more prepared you are, the better is the first impression going to be. Are you setting the tone? Is your body language very positive? Because if the students sense a negative body language, their level of enthusiasm goes down. So if you are reflecting a positive body language, I think that's very important. That is getting to class on time. If you are walking in 5 minutes late, and then you expect the students to be in class on time, I just don't think that's a fair expectation. So again, it is important that whatever you want the students to do on the first day, you have to make sure you are an example for them. You are a role model for them, I think. And that's what I'm trying to capture in these bullets, is setting the tone on the first day of class. Some of the do's and don'ts on the first day of class, as I said, arrive early if you can. Come prepared, be organized, welcome the students as they arrive, be enthusiastic, establish a inviting environment, encourage conversation. What you don't want to do is just hand out, I'm calling it a syllabus, but whatever document you are supposed to hand out, just don't hand that out and leave, or ignore the students. Or tell the students you are nervous because you're teaching this course the first time. You may be nervous, but don't exhibit that nervousness. Or that you don't like the subject matter, or this is a very difficult course, or nobody's going to get an A in this course. These are all negative thoughts, and these are things you don't want to do on the first day of class. In fact, you should never do this on any day of the class, but definitely not on the first day of class. So these are just some pointers for what your behavior should be in the classroom and what you should not be doing in the classroom. The course description document, I'm calling it a syllabus, whatever you want to call it. There is a system, and this is a document. This is sort of a contract between you and the student. This is an unofficial contract between you and the students, but you're sort of laying out what you are expecting the students, what the course is all about. So every institute, department, faculty has a system of informing their students about what will be covered in a particular course.
40% of the people who have about 5%, that's really very easy to manage. Then 6 to 10% is 35. 11 to 15% is about 18%. Okay, wonderful. Only few people, I think maybe depending on specific courses, you have more than 60% of the course left, which is like a bit serious. Even I would say 11 to 15% slot needs some kind of, we need to take some steps for that. Okay, so I've noted this down, and we will go to the next. Yeah, we can see that there are the people who just give up 2%, very few people, and sometimes you really have to do that. But let's see if we can find a solution for all these things. I have 14% of people say we put lectures on the website. That is one solution, but 81% of the people are always taking extra classes. Now, okay, this seems like taking extra classes seems like a natural solution. But can you imagine the situation of the student who is taking 4 courses and everybody is trying to take extra classes at the end of the semester? And at the end of the semester, they have their own worries about, I have to prepare for the exam, some work is left, I have some backup to complete, this, that, and other. So they're not really in a proper frame of mind to receive the information that you're giving. They're attending classes because maybe they need attendance, or maybe they just may want to have the comfort of saying, okay, I'm attending all the extra classes. I'm not sure how much benefit that can bring to them. You are taking 1 extra class, they are attending 4 extra classes per week, because everybody is doing that, and that's the normal thing to do, we think of it. So the whole idea was this whole research that we put together was, what else can we do? How else can we do that? So basically, one very upper level suggestion is that instead of taking the extra classes at the end, take the extra classes during the semester. So now assignment 1, we did the unit level planning. Now in the unit level plan, already you see that maybe you lag behind if by 1 class, or something you wanted to cover was not covered. So my one upper level recommendation is that instead of keeping that towards the end, take the extra class before the end of that unit 1. So we will be interacting, and I want to know whether these are my recommendations. And well, my recommendation means they're not just from the air, but a lot of work has been done on that. I've interviewed many students, senior students, many faculty, and come up with some solutions, because one of the things we want to do in IICP is to talk about the challenges. Okay, so so we'll come back and we'll find out where we are losing time. That
more problems leads some time consumption process, and maybe they don't understand the topic. We continue to the next class also for the same topic, sir. That is why we are consuming more time.
What are the solutions? So my how do you say, the result of my research has been the 3 areas where generally people we lose as faculty, we lose time is, one is covering the prerequisites. So we think it is our responsibility to go over the prerequisites again and again. And the other area where we lose a lot of time is also discussing assignments, corrected assignments. We have to find alternate ways of doing these things. All these things are very important. I'm not suggesting don't do them, but I'm saying don't do it maybe not in class all the time. So remember, we are trying to optimize the class time. Your class time is your premium time, or contact time. So you cannot afford, it's like our lectures. You've seen our webinar, this 1 hour is my prime time. I'm not going to just waste on somebody hasn't done the work. Okay, you need to do it. Inefficient manage of the content. So we will talk about these 3 things, and hopefully there'll be some solution definitely for the thing. Now, how do we resolve all this situation that we have said, okay, we lose time when the people are doing cultural events, where people lose time when they don't come to class, and then they don't understand, we repeat the whole thing. If we are teaching a new concept, we want to make sure that they have understood. So the clear solution, and the only possible solution, is that you need to partner with your students and technology. So technology is going to help you optimize your class time. As we had 18% people said they put their lectures on the website, only 18. And these are the people who have they have about 11 to 15% of content remaining. So if we think that we are not the only one responsible for the course, the responsibility is to be shared with the students, and you have to make this clear in day 1 for your class. And you can say, guys, this class is going to be, this course is very challenging, or it's very interesting, but it needs a lot of work from you. So you need to step up and do many of the things yourself. And technology. So basically, I know COVID is over, we are back to regular classes. Must have your virtual classroom. Must, absolutely. Today, there is absolutely no way you can survive without a virtual classroom, whether it is through an LMS, whether through just Google Classroom, whatever way you want it is good enough, right? I know many of you have WhatsApp. WhatsApp is very good, is a great communication tool, but it's not an academic tool. I want to emphasize that. Every time I talk to people, ma'am, I have a WhatsApp group and that works very well. That doesn't work well for teaching. It works well for communication. You want to send a notice, you send an announcement. Tomorrow the class will, please plan to stay back. It will be another 15 minutes, or whatever way you want to, whatever announcement you want to give. So remember that we are depending on students and technology. Now, when you say depending on students and technology, we can't say students have to do this. You need to plan that way, right? And we'll take your input on that. Managing prerequisites. First of all, okay, prerequisites. I'm just going to have another poll.
Yes. End the poll, Sridhar, and then share the results. Yeah.
Yes, we have 1 class, 26%, 10% say take 2 classes, and then most of the people, 64%, they say they have a prerequisite 20 to 30 minutes beginning of each unit. Yeah, that's reasonable, but even that we can save in a little bit, not saving the time so much, but basically shifting the responsibility to the student. Because when they come to your course, they're supposed to know all the prerequisites, right? They have completed a course, they've passed that course with whatever grade, and they have come to you. They need to have, and we know it doesn't happen. We know that they do not have the prereqs properly. So I have some solutions for that for you. Okay. So what are the possible strategies? The possible strategies are that on day 1, you have to remember we did that whole exercise on your introduction to day one. I know it was very small, 5 minutes is not enough. But one of the things we said was, we want to spend a few minutes on explaining how you will run this course. Then only you can personalize that course for you. So you know that, for example, particularly people who are teaching core courses, they are like 7 sections for the same class, right? Or they're teaching 100 level courses. So they are like six classes for the same course. Of course, it's the same content, but you can personalize your course the way you want to organize the course. And students, let me tell you, students, any time that you spend on your course, organizing your course or designing activities or designing assessment, students are very appreciative. They like that. They want to have a personalized course, right? So inform the students that, guys, of course you will take care of it, but you say, I'm not going to be responsible for your prerequisites. You need to be prepared for it. But for that, what you need to do is, before the start of the course, identify the key concepts, knowledge from the prerequisite that the students have to be proficient about. Put them on your virtual classroom. For them, tell them, first of all, do you know these things? If you do not know this, read this material and take this self-correcting quiz. You'll have to put in some work, but if you're teaching the same course again, all that you have to do only once. Because if you have a virtual classroom, you can recycle the same material, add new things, whatever you want to do. And then you have a pre-test kind of thing for each unit. So for the people who spend 20-30 minutes before the start of a unit, I would ask the students to take the pre-test and base my 20-30 minutes on the pre-test results, knowing what people have not understood or where the people need to do something. Again, I do not want to spend my class time on taking prerequisites. I want to guide them how they can upgrade themselves or update themselves on that. Okay, sorry. I just want to ask quick question, quick comments. Do you think this is doable? So let's have raise.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't have a thing, but okay, but your colleagues might feel that you're complaining against them. But basically, we have to see what you can do individually to take charge of your own students and their knowledge. So if you do put in this effort ahead of time and say, okay, this is the course, these are the prerequisites, and I'm sure that this concept will have difficulty. So this particular concept is difficult, so explain again in your word. You can have a small handout. You can have a couple of self-correcting questions on that. Not very difficult to design all that. And put it up on the from day one. You have to get your students used to working the virtual classroom, looking at the virtual classroom as a supplement to your classroom. So what are we actually doing is, we're trying to save class time by putting some of the activities on the virtual classroom and making students responsible for doing that. Krishna, please jump in whenever you have any comment on this.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great. Yeah.
Because this is a big challenge. Yeah. The second place where we lose a lot of time is when we are discussing assignments, which I think is very important. We need to discuss assignments, but we don't need to spend a whole class doing that. Right? Because somebody will say, ma'am, I didn't get this. And then you get involved in that argument, and no, you let me see what is that, what is this. Again, the solution here, let me just go with the solution, and then I'm going to ask you your comment. Okay. Okay, again, a poll. How much time do you spend in discussing each corrected assignment?
Okay.
We do have most of the people 20 to 30 minutes, and some people 30 to 45 minutes means your whole class, because your class is 50 minutes, right? So basically,
there's a response from Kanmani saying her solution is to post them on Google Classroom, the solutions.
Absolutely. Yes, Kanmani, that was exactly what I was going to suggest. There are a couple of ways in which we can optimize this time. And please know, I'm not saying that these are not
Excuse
important.
me, ma'am. Even we can discuss this in office hours, no, ma'am, instead of spending
Yes,
time during class.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, Kanmani. This is exactly what
Sujata, that is Sujata. That was
Sujata, sorry. That is what I was going to suggest here. So how do you do? So basically, post the correct answer and the highest scoring response on the website. Ask everyone to reevaluate themselves. Okay. So you say, okay, if you got 7 on 10, now you have the right answer. You have a sample super assignment, which got 90%, 95%. How will you reevaluate yourself? You'll find they will reevaluate even lower than what you have. So this will, this cuts out all the complaint part of it. Because half the time people are saying, I didn't get enough time, I didn't get enough grade, I worked so hard on it and all. Okay, you worked so hard on it, but then you have to see. Ask the failing students to pick up their corrected assignments during office hours. Highly recommended for supporting low performing students. So some of the students don't give their assignments in the return their assignments and say, I need you to come and pick up the assignment from during the office hour. And then you go over the assignment with this. So 2 solutions suggested by the participants were excellent. Connect low scoring students with a high scoring one to explain what should have been done. So for example, the guy whose assignment is right on top has been chosen to be on the website, can have a small tutorial group and say, okay, can you, supposing, let's say Sridhar is the student who is up there with 95%, and I can request Sridhar, can you please have one lunchtime meeting with students? Just announce, whoever comes, they don't come, they don't come. You have to start. I know we are in a different context in India, but remember, your students are 17, 18 plus. They're adults. They're ready to vote. They're ready to have girlfriends. They're ready to have everything else. I mean, they can do everything, but they need to have responsibility for their courses as well. Right? So we have to find ways, smart ways in which we can save the class time. Okay. And now the more concrete solutions that I have is I've come up with an activity called peer supported independent study. And this is something that took almost 3 years for me to kind of finalize. And we have been running it for now three sessions, excellent results. So I recommend that for everyone, but you can see what it is. Yeah, we have 6 to 10%, 42%, and then we have 11 to 15, about 30%. If you look at this, if you look at this data, and we compare it with the first poll, where
it's exactly the same numbers.
yeah, which says how much of your course is left at the end.
11
it's
to 15%.
Almost the same numbers.
11 to 15% was the maximum at that time. Same thing
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, same thing here. So basically, what we are saying is when we say partnering with technology and partnering with students, we are going to pick out some portion that the students can do themselves outside the class. That will be entirely done online in groups as an activity. Okay. So basically, if you have 10% means material for 2 to 3 lectures that the students can do themselves if you have 38 classes left and you have 10 to 12. If you start calculating in a very, very sharp manner, don't be hazy about my course semester. We take semester as a big chunk and we take course as a big chunk. So my second overall recommendation is start micro calculating, that how many classes I have, what are the different concepts, how much time do you think I need for this concept? How can I optimize it? What is it that I can put on the website? What is it that I can manage through the office hour? What is it that I can manage with extra class? I'm not saying extra classes are not doable, but don't keep them for the end of the semester. Do them as you go along. Okay, so if I have a concept which needs 3 classes and I can allocate only 2, I could take one of the classes. I think you have options or these bridge classes and many of the, or I can take a special online class, or I can take a special class immediately at that time, which will be very effective as compared to you taking that at the end of the class, because they have lost the context of what you're teaching, right? They have to, you can say, okay, now one more thing, I have to do this, which was left here. It doesn't work. Okay, so sorry, let me go back. Selected segment of the course are allocated to students for studying independently in small groups, mostly outside the class. These segments are should be a part of summative assessment. So otherwise the students will not take part in it. So you can say, okay, in the final exam, or if the mid semester is coming or whatever, there will be a 2 to 3 mark question on this portion that you're doing now. You will work on that with a group of students. So now you are not offloading your work. They are actually this means a lot of work for you, but then your class time is saved. And you have the satisfaction of having completed everything very nicely. Now, the peer-supported independent group has also many other benefits, because it's like a collaborative activity. And in the next module, which is starting on the 31st of August, we will learn about teamwork and active learning. So that is the module that is starting on 31st August, or how we can make students think or do, all these things we keep talking. These terms have become cliched, like critical thinking, problem solving. We hear it all the time, but do we really understand how we can apply them in class? Okay, so now how do we do that? So I'm not going to go into that independent study and all that. We know that. Okay, so basically you will learn more about it. But we have been, Professor Bush has been talking about graduate attributes. An activity like peer-supported independent study, it develops many of those graduate attributes, including lifelong learning, because they're doing everything on their own. You are there, you're creating everything. So you're assigned based on this activity. And today, right now, I'm going to go through the steps so that you'll fully understand that. Okay. So the first thing is, and I suggest that you do that right before the start of the semester, is to sift the course content. And so the course content is given to you already in units, but in the units also, you can see some of it can be introductory, which the students can manage themselves. So here you have to, right in the beginning of the semester, you have to find out what the course looks like. Your core concepts are the soul of the course, that they have to learn. These concepts will now become the prerequisite of the next course. So you really have to make sure that you spend a lot of time and make sure that as many students in your class master it, right? So your nearly 75% of your course falls into this category. Agreed? And your final exam or the exams evaluation is based on this 75% marks most of the time. But there are also some topics which are suitable for independent study. When you say 10 to 15% or 6 to 10%, I want you to now, not now at this time, but when you are planning, if you're already in the middle of the class, you can still do it. But if you're towards the end of your semester, I don't advise you to do it now, but plan it for the next semester. Find out what is it the students can do themselves, and So already I have already decided that before the start. So much of the whole idea of this course design and planning unit, the module, sorry, is that as much time as you can put in your course before the start of the semester, the more comfortable you will be, the more rewarded you will be, the more happy you will be, and more productive your class will be, right? So we cannot, once the semester starts, and maybe you're teaching 2 courses, you're not going to have enough time. But generally there is enough time lag between when you know what I'm teaching next semester to the actual start of the semester, right? So let's go back again. So here, you are taking those segments and then designing an activity around that segment. That's what we are doing. So, of course, it just says PSI helps you in-depth understanding, collaborative teamwork, interpersonal communication, lifelong learning, student autonomy. We learned in module 1 that your generation Z students love autonomy. They want to do things by themselves. They don't want to follow, what is 3 follows 2 and 4 follows 3. And all this builds self-confidence. Everybody will not do well, but because of the group, they are salvaged. So when you're planning PSI, what do you have to do? First is prepare the students for the concept, explain the advantage, tell them, get them excited, tell them, okay, we are going to be doing an interesting independent study work yourself. You're going to be, here are the groups, you can make the groups, or we'll talk about that. Activity must be graded with clear rewards, marks, awards, or whatever. Otherwise, students are not motivated to do that because they're already, remember, they're burdened. They're doing 4 courses. They already have so much work. Use the course website, online classroom for conducting PSIS. So that is why you need the virtual classroom. Please, you need the virtual classroom. As soon as you plan your course, create the classroom. Day 1, give them the access to the classroom. Have some welcome notice, tell them this is what is going to happen, have the course schedule, have your policy document, whatever you can do, right? Begin with a simple concept that students can study by themselves. So basically, I recommend, and people have confirmed that with me, the faculty, you can do 2 PSIS activities during the semester. And that covers your 10% of the course content. So one will be to begin with a simple one, so that students get an idea of how to manage that. Designing PSI with clear outcomes can easily implement 2 tasks per semester. Okay, choose a good time for the semester to do it. One of the big mistakes we make as faculty is the timing of doing something. So even the flipped class, you learned about the flipped class. If I start doing the flipped class in week 1, some students are still joining, they don't know what the course is, what is happening. It's not the right time to do anything new in the first week. Let them get to know the students. You begin to know them, you know who's in which category, how to make the groups in a nice heterogeneous group or whatever. So choose the good time. I generally have 2 collaborative activities. I don't have PSIS because I teach online, but I have 2 collaborative activities for my courses, and I generally place them on week 3 and week 7. So, or week 7 or week 9, whatever you can. That is my recommendation. And then you plan the evaluation. Okay. So I want to do what kind of activities they can do. Okay, I'm going to come back to this one. I want to also come back here. I want to implement, I'm going to go step by step because I want to finish this in time. So the first step 1 for doing this is choosing the topic and writing the outcomes. What is it that you want students to know after doing this? Always writing the outcomes is the most important. So this activity will have 1 outcome, right? Not too many, maybe 2 at the most, but 1 outcome. So I've taken a sample with the help of one of my colleagues. Let's say you are designing or you're teaching a course called Introduction to Website Development, right? And the topic is HTML elements. the outcome will be at the end of PS, students will be able to define the core elements of HTML, apply core elements in a website, and develop a basic website with efficient navigation to content pages. This is a big project, but something like this the students can do by themselves if you think. Okay. Explain step 2, explain the activity, why you're doing it, or what is the platform. Suggested timeline is 10. Don't give them half a semester to do this. Give them very specific timeline that this needs to be done. You should have at least 5 meetings of the group, and the group has to meet online. Every LMS has the facility for making groups, and these groups can work on their own. And another recommendation I have is what I do when I do my collaborative activities. I am a silent partner of each group. I don't participate. I just, so when they send a notice for a meeting, I get the notice. So I know it helps me to monitor them. I also attend sometimes, and if I know they're going off track, that is the time I intervene slowly and I just say, okay, have you looked at these resources, or do you think this will be helpful? Minimal suggestions, but I'm there because I'm going to grade them. Okay, so the groups can be created by you or by students, but I think the first activity, if you're doing the new one, we'll take all the questions. Let me just finish the steps, please, and then because I want to make sure that the assignment is done well. So now the task here that we chose was make a website about wonders of the world. Choose 4 or 5 monuments, plan layout of the individual page, show pictures, etc. Design, create navigation system, create 4 or 5 slides, and submit the link to the students. So this is the task. But you can have, I mean, this is very specific, but I have some suggestions for what kind of tasks are good for, you can ask them to do. Ask students to research an identified topic and list 3 best resources to study. The group will create a small explanation for each resource. They can take a video, they can look at a MOOC, supposing, let's say AI for education. Or let them do research, something general topic, which is also maybe related to your, depending on what course you're teaching. Or ask the group to read a research paper related to the concept and submit a written report highlighting the claims made in the paper. Okay, so they are looking at the research paper, they're reading, they're discussing, they're analyzing, they're preparing a report. List products based on a principal concept. Ask each group to pick a separate product, research and upload a presentation on the course website. Everything will be done outside the class for PSIS. Ask the students to identify, create new applications of the concept studied. So let's say, or you can ask the students to suggest how the concept studied may be applied to improve the efficiency of an existing product or a process, something like that. So basically, what is a good activity for PSIS, which has an outcome? It is an outcome like a report. It's an outcome like a presentation, outcome like a video input, how the product can be improved, or a whole process where, so it has to be something which makes them think, something that is exciting, and something which has an end. So if you say, I'm giving this, why I'm bringing this up is because many of the people, some of the people in the beginning, the first time when we did, they said, I asked them to group to discuss this and record their observations. That is not PSIS activity. They really have to do something. Okay, that product has to be there. Then only they will get confidence. If you ask them to discuss something, then okay, Veena Kumar is talking all the time, and our Krishna is giving some inputs, but Sridhar is quiet all the time. So how do I know what the group is doing? We need to have some input, okay? And then when your professor talks about collaborative learning, they will tell you how you can evaluate the group involvement and evaluate the individual involvement also. But right now we are just saying, we are talking about the group involvement, okay? Now here to conduct the PSIS, make sure that all instructions are given in writing. They should be on the website. They should be all in writing. Allocate online space to the group to work, and that's very easily done. Every LMS has that. Keep one dedicated office hour to meet with the groups. So you can say, I'm available I'm creating a special office hour on Wednesday at lunchtime for PSIS activity. You can also have an online office hour. I didn't, because I teach online, so I have everything online. Create groups that you will learn more about it, but right now you can do anything. Create groups, give them a clear timeline. Best is 5 to 7 days, 10 days is the maximum. It will make no difference whether you give them 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They are only going to work on the last couple of days. Clearly announce the marks and the activity and the reward, if any. So whatever, if there is a bonus points, if you have the possibility, but you have to make a lot of noise about the winning teams or the winning groups, and we'll talk about that, okay? Sorry, I'm going through this because I want you to do well for your assignment, and then I'll take the question. Okay, this is very interesting. How do you have many interesting ways of evaluating PSIS. This activity will be graded and rewarded marks, prizes for the best 3 teams, you can say. Okay, you can give small prizes. Give them a pizza party or something small, you know. Evaluation must be planned online. The assessment pattern rubric must be shared with the students. And we have not done the other steps. The steps, one of the steps is creating a rubric. You can also ask the class to evaluate by voting. The class can go, so once all the projects are online, you can ask the class to vote for the best project. They let them evaluate. I have tried also very good for one of the workshops that we did was we asked senior students, people from your senior class who have done this course to evaluate this. And that becomes very, how do you say, objective. So they don't know the students and they don't know. So we were here, now I'm just going to go. We were here about the activity. And then you have to post the learning materials. So in this case, we found a lot of videos that are posted there. You can post some videos. If you're giving them research articles, you can pick the articles, or you can give them list of articles and they can pick one themselves, or pick 2 or whatever they have, whatever you want to do. So this is your job also. And then of course, create a rubric. And then submission guidelines, again in writing. Each group needs to submit the following under PS assignment, blah, 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 blah. And this is what it is, 5 to 7 slides explaining the process. This is why, because we took an example, assessment will be online. There's a rubric there. Submission can be evaluated by another faculty member, senior student, students themselves, etc. Okay. So
okay, Veena, I need to leave. I'm going to leave.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, Krishna, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let me go to the assignment here, but I'm going to take questions after this. So in the assignment, you will you can create a table, and you can this is very easy. Title of the course segment. You have to justify why you have chosen this. Why does he able to do this? Learning outcome. What platform? What is the timeline? Start and end dates. 2 activities that you will design. 2 activities from that chunk, that segment that you have decided. You can I asked for 2 activities because I want you to think in a broader perspective. And how will you evaluate? This will be August 23rd. Okay.